We'll start this morning, though, with the latest pandemic news. At-home coronavirus tests are about to become more accessible to millions of Americans.
Government is making another billion-dollar investment in 180 million at-home rapid tests. The goal, make tests more accessible, as some public health officials worry the U.S. could be hit with another COVID surge this winter.
In the past few months, testing has increased, particularly at-home testing, a convenient option that came to market earlier this year. To meet this increased demand, the president's plan ramps up both the availability of tests and access to free testing.
This comes as President Biden prepares to visit Chicago. It's part of his push to expand vaccine mandates nationwide. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now with more on all this. So, Monica, let's first talk about this investment in testing. At-home tests have been hard to come by in recent weeks. We've seen concern over the costs of these kits. So what changes now?
Many of us have experienced this for ourselves, Joe. You try to get an at-home rapid test so you can maybe make a trip or because you're going to go visit some family members, and either pharmacies are sold out, they're impossible to get online. So the Biden administration really making an investment. Last month, they announced $2 billion would go toward this effort, and yesterday they added another $1 billion and authorized a new at-home test that can be taken in order to get results so that people can try to have a little bit of that peace of mind, given we don't know what the months ahead will look like. So here's what White House coronavirus coordinator Jeff Zients had to say about why they're making this decision and why now.
This means companies will be able to expand production of tests even further based on the United States government's commitment to procure an additional 180 million rapid tests over the course of the next year, with tens of millions more tests coming to market over the course of the next 30 days.
The administration is hoping that with more demand, if they are able to increase supply, that will also, at some point at least, bring the cost down. Right now, they're trying to have them be at cost, meaning that companies aren't making a lot of money from them. But still, again, this has been a challenge, one they haven't been able to resolve so far over the last 18 months. Savannah and Joe.
So tests are one part of this, vaccines the other part. President Biden will be in Chicago today speaking about vaccine mandates. So why Chicago, and what can we expect to hear from the president today?
He's going to be making this push more broadly for why he believes vaccine mandates are so effective. And he's going to use one example of a company based in Chicago, United Airlines, that was the first among its group to require vaccinations for its workforce. More than 99% of their employees complied with this. So they are going to be able to point to that, the administration hopes, as a sign of success and a model for other companies they hope do the same. Remember, the White House, as part of their six-pronged strategy, wants any company with more than 100 employees to have these kind of vaccine mandates in place or have rigorous testing.
Monica, Los Angeles just passed a strict vaccine mandate similar to what we have here in New York. So what more can you tell us about this mandate and what top public health officials are saying about these types of vaccine requirements that we're starting to see across some parts of the country?
So if you're in Los Angeles County now and you want to go to a bar, the gym, a salon, spa, any of these places indoors, you will have to show proof of vaccination, much like you guys have to do currently in New York City. And what's notable about this is that already we're seeing some vaccine mandates for populations like school kids throughout California. But this is the first of its kind that's a little bit more rigorous. And some officials, of course, have raised concerns. This will also apply to large outdoor venues. You will either have to show proof of vaccination or submit a negative COVID test. So this is just adding to some of the requirements we've seen already. And here's how the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, put it on why he believes it's critical that more cities do this.
Vaccine requirements reflect a fundamental reality, that our individual decisions affect other people when it comes to COVID. We don't live in a bubble. We live in a community. And that is why there have been a number of instances throughout history where we have made a decision as a society to abide by common rules that protect the common good.
Notably, if businesses do not comply with these new rules, they could face fines themselves. So that does put this also in a broader phase with bigger implications, Joe.
All right, Monica Alba kicking us off from the White House. Thank you, Monica.
Dr. Amish Adalja joins us now. He's a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Doctor, always great to have you with us. So I want to start with those at-home tests with you today. How accurate are they? When should people go to get them? Who should be seeking them out? And what should people do if they get a positive result when they're just at home?
So the accuracy of the test really depends upon what question you're asking the test. And with these at-home rapid tests, you're asking the test, am I contagious to others? Am I a risk to others? And for that purpose, these tests are really accurate because they're able to pick up amounts of virus that are associated with a transmission risk to others. They're not the same thing as PCR tests, but you're asking a PCR test usually a different question. The question you're asking a PCR test is, what am I sick with? These are really good for screening people that are asymptomatic who just want to know their status if they can be around others. And if you get a positive, you should confirm it with another test, because we've had some false positives with certain tests like the Illum test, which was under kind of a recall right now. So there's something that you need to follow up when they're positive, but if they're negative and you do them over time, they're very valuable.
All right, that's great to know. Now let's talk about what we're heading into here with the holidays and the winter. The White House says it's preparing for the potential of a surge, but we're seeing cases and hospitalizations decline right now. What is the possibility that cases could spike as we get into the colder months? Are you expecting that?
I do think that transmission is going to increase when it gets colder, less humid, when it's less sunny, when people are indoors, just because coronavirus is spread more efficiently that way. But hopefully by that time, enough high-risk people will have been vaccinated or are immune through natural immunity that we won't see those cases translate into hospitalizations the way we did, for example, in the South and in places like Idaho and Alaska. But we're going to always have ebbs and flows of this virus. It's with us basically forever now, and it has a seasonality to it. And winter is always a time when respiratory viruses spread more efficiently.
With us forever, but hopefully we are continuing to find ways to live with it more normally and safely. Dr. Amish Adalja, always great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Congressional leaders might have found a bit of common ground in the political standoff over the debt ceiling, enough to dodge a crisis in the short term. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is offering a new deal to Democrats. It's a temporary fix to avert crashing through the debt ceiling and potentially throwing the economy into chaos. Under the proposal, Republicans would essentially get out of the way so Democrats can extend the debt limit until December. Democrats would need to accept the offer first. On top of all of that, today is a big deadline in the January 6th insurrection. 4 Trump associates and confidants must comply with subpoenas to present documents by today. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell joins us now. So, Leanne, let's start with the debt limit. Some have characterized what happened this way. Mitch McConnell blinked. So how did this potential deal come about? What are both sides saying about it?
Good morning, Joe. That's exactly what Democrats are saying, that Mitch McConnell blinks. They're saying that he got nervous because there was a serious plan on the table to carve out the filibuster, change the Senate rules to allow lifting or suspending of this debt limit. And that is when he came up with these proposals. Now, I will say this agreement is not finalized yet. The 2 leaders, Schumer and McConnell, have been working through the night to try to finalize this. Hopefully that will happen today. But Senator Sheldon Whitehouse on MSNBC yesterday explained the Democrats' thinking, and let's listen.
Well, I think their play was make Mitch take us as close to a debt limit crisis as we can to see if the Democrats fold. And when we didn't, they realized that a global economic meltdown led by a U.S. debt limit crisis was going to blow them up with everybody else. And so they pulled the plug on the plan. Mitch folded, and now we've got time to go ahead and do Build Back Better.
But, Joe, it's important to note this does not solve the crisis if this is agreed to. It just punts it until December, at the same time when the government funding runs out as well. So happy holidays.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this again. What a way to spend your holidays, Leanne. I'm sure you're already making plans. Let's turn to the deadline for 4 members of Trump's inner circle to give up documents. What happens if they don't comply?
Yeah, that's right. For very close associates of the former president, including his former chief of staff and several of his top advisors, those documents are supposed to be turned over today. We've gotten no indication yet that they have complied. But one member of the January 6th Select Committee, Representative Jamie Raskin, laid out what the next steps are if they don't. Let's listen.
is turning the information over to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia and trying to get the Department of Justice to demand that these people appear in court and be jailed until the point at which they cooperate with the congressional subpoena. It could be civil contempt, or it also could be inherent contempt of Congress, where we design our own process for hauling these people in and perhaps fining them until they're willing to cooperate.
So they're trying to take it to the next level. This could be litigated in the courts. It sounds like the four people are taking the Trump tactic of ignoring Congress. So,
Leanne, let's also talk about some new approval numbers for the president. The latest Quinnipiac University poll finds 53% disapprove of the president's performance, 38% approve. This is the worst polling of his presidency. So what are some of the reasons, from what you can tell, his ratings are dropping? And are Democrats, including ones you speak with daily, are they worried?
Yeah, it's not good. It has to do with the border crisis, the exit in Afghanistan, COVID. There's a lot of reasons. And the Democrats I'm talking to, there's a couple of thoughts here. Some of the moderates, this makes them really nervous, especially going along with a multi-trillion-dollar plan of the president's priorities. But on the flip side, that's what Democratic leadership is trying to sell to their members. Say, look, you are tied to the president regardless, so it's much better if he succeeds. So let's make sure he succeeds in his plans. And that's better for all of us, Joe.
All right, Leanne Caldwell. Leanne, thanks.
Let's now go to Texas and a major overnight development in the legal battle over abortion rights. A federal judge has temporarily blocked enforcement of the state's abortion ban. The Justice Department sued Texas after the Supreme Court allowed the controversial SB 8 to take effect, which outlaws abortions after 6 weeks. The court granted an emergency request last night in a wide-ranging 113-page opinion. Here's part of that. The judge wrote, "From the moment SB 8 went into effect, women have been unlawfully prevented from exercising control over their lives in ways that are protected by the Constitution." Of course, that means that it is time to invite NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos to join us. Danny, good morning. So first, I have a lot of questions on this one. I want to provide a little bit more context and read part of what Attorney General Merrick Garland said in reaction to this ruling. Here it is. He put out this statement and it says in part, quote, "A victory for women in Texas and for the rule of law," adding, "We will continue to protect constitutional rights against all who would seek to undermine them." So my first question for you is just, what does this mean for Texas women waking up today? I mean, today, could they go to a provider that yesterday they could have been sued for going to? What does this mean right now?
Yes, they can go to a provider, but this injunction prevents lawsuits against that provider and anyone who assists in the abortion. And that's really, really amazing, because the court spent dozens and dozens of pages explaining how and who would actually be enjoined, because that's what the statute sought to avoid. So in essence, there's a passage in the opinion that says, look, state of Texas, you have to figure out who exactly you're enjoining, whether it be courts, whether it be officers, whether it be the attorney general, whoever. But you can't enforce this law. You can't even maintain a lawsuit. And that's the key of the injunction.
Danny, I want to read a little bit more also from the judge's ruling. Here's some of that other courts may find a way to avoid this conclusion is theirs to decide. This court will not sanction one more day of this offensive deprivation of such an important right. Kind of put in context for us how big of a deal it is that a judge on a court lower than the Supreme Court temporarily blocked this law and what that means for it moving forward.
It's a huge deal because this district court did what the Supreme Court would not do weeks ago and what Justice Roberts thought it should have done. But, you know, that passage you just read shows that this district court understands its role, that on appeal, the appellate courts and eventually the Supreme Court will look at all of these legal issues fresh. It's almost sort of an act of civil disobedience by the court, because it knows it has the preclusive effect of, say, an opinion in the Washington Post, because the courts, the Fifth Circuit, and then the Supreme Court will look at all of these issues fresh. But that's why they wrote such a long opinion, this court, so that if they do overturn it, they've got to do it at their own risk.
Yeah. And so, Danny, the state of Texas also, aside from all this going back and forth, has already appealed the ruling. Tell us, where does that go from here? What does that mean? And also, what about those lawsuits that we had already seen taking place? People suing women, people suing the providers?
those are essentially frozen. Or arguably, they no longer exist based on the wording of the order. That might be litigated itself. But from here, it goes up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then from there up to the Supreme Court. And the rules say that when it comes to these issues of law, that the appellate courts, including the Supreme Court, get to look at everything de novo. That means with fresh eyes. So the district court opinion here may ultimately be overturned, and all of those legal issues scrapped.
All right, Danny Cevallos, as always, we need you on things like this. Thank you so much for walking us through.
An 18-year-old suspect is in custody after a shooting at a high school in Arlington, Texas. Police say Timothy Simpkins turned himself in yesterday afternoon without incident. Now an investigation is underway to determine what led up to the shooting, which left 4 people injured. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from outside Timberview High School where the shooting happened. Sam, what more can you tell us?
Joe, good morning. Look, anytime that you speak with a student who describes going into survival mode when they walk through the doors of a school, you're left with the realization, Joe, this is going to impact them for the rest of their lives. Police right now are investigating whether or not a fist fight ultimately led to the gunfire, and they do that right now as they're investigating multiple videos as well. We have to warn you, they are disturbing to watch.
Outside, heavily armed law enforcement blanketing Timberview High School, while inside, students and staff on lockdown for hours following a school shooting. All of it enough to bring a flood of emotions from panicked parents and terrified teens.
I immediately start calling my son, calling. Like, he could come here and hurt us too. That isn't fair.
Police have 18-year-old Timothy Simpkins in custody. They say just after a fistfight, he discharged his gun around 9 in the morning, injuring 4 people, 1 critically. He's facing 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Arlington PD confirms they're investigating this video showing one student picking up another and slamming him several times. But they're not confirming the identity of anyone in the clip. Nor are police discussing what appears to be 6 shots heard in this video. On the 2nd floor and just down the hallway from the shooting, Mimi, a 10th grader, hid behind a desk.
You know, I was shocked. I was kind of numb. I couldn't believe this was happening.
12 hours later, her mother is still shaken.
I just kept testing her. I just said, Mimi, just hold on. God is in control. Just keep praying. Just hide.
Mimi sent her mom this text, which read in part, "I heard the gunshots because my classroom was near it. Then a police officer was like, 'Put your hand up.' Her mom responds, 'We'll call your dad. Are you okay?'"
Do you feel like you'll ever be able to see school through the same lens again?
No, I think I won't. I would remember this day, probably the rest of my life.
Later in the day, SWAT cars surrounding the alleged shooter's house and entering a neighborhood with high-powered rifles. Students inside teacher Dale Topham's classroom stacked chairs and tables in front of the door as a barricade. Topham explaining what students believe as the possible motive.
I heard my students talking amongst themselves, and they said that he had been bullied at school, apparently repeatedly, and he wasn't going to take it anymore.
Police so far, Joe, have declined to say what role, if any, bullying has played in this latest shooting episode. And I would just add 1,700 students, according to authorities, that were in that school yesterday. That means roughly 3,400 parents had no idea for hours whether or not their child was shot. Joe, back to you.
Not the first time, and sadly probably won't be the last time we see that. Sam, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's go check now on your morning news now weather.
Bill Cairns, hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning. For the last couple of days, I've been talking about all the heavy rain in Alabama, and last night it finally was just too much, especially from Pelham, Alabama, all the way up to the Birmingham area. A line of thunderstorms rolled over the region. It dumped tremendous amounts of rainfall. And just got this update in from the Pelham Fire Department. They said they had 281 calls for service. They rescued 82 people from their homes. 15 to 20 people were rescued from vehicles. They said there were 15 separate agencies that assisted in the operation. They had 107 emergency responders, and they said 16 boats were staged, and at one point, 12 of them were in the water all at one time. doing rescues. The water has now since subsided. The schools are closed in the region. No updates on any injuries or fatalities, so that's good. Hopefully there weren't any, but yeah, it was a serious situation overnight there where they had a flash flood emergency. So that storm that was responsible for that mess is still sitting over Missouri. There's still areas of heavy rain around Panama City this morning. Then there's that other little pesky storm just off the South Carolina coast. So we still do have some flash flood warnings. One of them is right over the top of Panama City, the other one north of Birmingham. And so again, as we go throughout the day today, isolated flash flooding is possible, especially northern Georgia and the mountains of North Carolina. That's where some of the heaviest rainfall will be during the next 24 hours. And then we still have that little tropical disturbance that's just off the coast of Florida. This is not expected to become a big tropical storm, but it is adding even more rainfall and moisture to areas of the southeast. And if it does develop, about a 20% chance it will be right off the North Carolina coast. And this thing is just going to sit and linger, just horrendous beach conditions in the Carolinas for the next 4 to 5 days. So today's forecast, the winters, the Northeast is going to be gorgeous today. Too hot for my liking in Dallas once again. 92 today, San Antonio 92. And look at tomorrow, near record, if not record highs in Texas, guys.
Wow.
95 tomorrow in Dallas. Enough is enough.
Yeah, really.
In October? All right.
No. Ay. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.